Good evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about Objective 12, which is about the end of World War II and the lasting effects of the war. You should number these notes number 12. You can title them End of World War II, and you should be taking Cornell notes, which again means big ideas, topics, headings are on the left-hand side and your details are on the right. You need to make sure you draw a line with about 3 to 4 lines at the bottom so you can write a summary at the bottom of each page. Okay? And we're going to begin. So World War II ends in Europe as Germany surrenders. The American soldiers march on Berlin, Hitler commits suicide, and German troops surrender. And the war has won, but only in the Atlantic or Western European theater. The war continues on in Japan. Mussolini is also killed by his own people at the end towards the end of the war. So on April 29th, Mussolini is hung in public, as you can see, and the Nazis are able to take control of northern Germany to kind of step in Mussolini's absence. His body is taken up by Italian citizens, hung up and beaten. So you can only imagine what kind of resentment Mussolini has created with his people for them to want to, treat him this way and kill him this way. Make sure you're writing things down before the text shows up on the screen. Okay, so we have the death of Hitler right around the same time. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler is actually on his honeymoon. He just got married, even though he knew the American troops were marching into Germany. And in April 30th, 1945, he shoots his wife and then shoots himself inside his bunker in Berlin. So this is only 2 weeks after Mussolini's death. It's kind of a quick demise of our fascist leaders. In April of 1945, American and Russian troops successfully finished their invasion of Germany, leading up to Hitler's death, and German military leaders surrender shortly thereafter. They don't want to continue the bloodshed. So the end of World War II in Europe. Here on the left we have Churchill, Winston Churchill, who is the leader of Britain. In the middle we have Harry S. Truman, U.S. President, and on the right we have Joseph Stalin, the Russian leader. Remember, these are the Allied powers. They're all on the same side in World War II. So Germany officially surrenders in May of 1945. Remember, Hitler commits suicide at the end of April. And they meet at what is called the Potsdam Conference. And it's at this conference that Germany is divided into 4 sections, like you saw today in class, and it's occupied by the Allied powers. Germany is denazified. The Nazi party is disbanded and is determined to be illegal. And then there is what is called the Nuremberg trials are held. And this is an effort to find war criminals, those who helped design the Holocaust, the doctors and the SS soldiers who were at the head of the extermination of the Jews are put to death or sentenced to death. And these crimes against humanity came out. This is when the world becomes aware of the Holocaust. So it's not until the Americans liberate the concentration camps that they start to get an idea, look through the paperwork or what's left of it, and hold these trials, that what has gone on during the war really comes out. Before that, people only hear rumors. So before we talk about the treatment of Germany, I want you to think back to the treatment of Germany after World War I and how it was so severe that many would argue it led to World War II. We wanted to avoid this mistake again. So after World War I, you end up with the flawed Weimar Republic, which is a dictatorship. The people are starving and hungry. After World War II, instead, we denazify and get rid of the, and this is called the Marshall Plan. It's the United States Economic Advisor develops this idea, and we disband the Nazi Party. We also establish a democratic Western Germany. So France, Britain, and U.S. go in, have their troops, and also help at nation rebuilding. So they can maintain stability while Germany gets back on its feet. And on the east, you have the communists, the Russians, are help doing the same. War debts after World War I were exorbitant. They had to pay to allies in Belgium. They could never pay everything they were supposed to. They lost their colonies and territory. And after World War II, the Potsdam Conference said each Allied power would control a portion of Germany. Pardon me. And they lost the territories taken by Hitler. But there are no reparation payments made. Military, after World War I, Germany essentially had to get rid of their military. After World War II, we have the Allies that say, we will provide you with a military. And this idea of peacekeeping. After World War I, you have the League of Nations, which we saw does very little. You have the Treaty of Versailles saying Germany has to give up their land, pay reparations, etc. After World War II, you have the two major superpowers, US and the Soviets, USSR, in charge. They have strategic alliances. So the USSR develops the Warsaw Pact and unites with Eastern Europe, and the US develops NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is the nations of Western Europe and the United States. Additionally, you have the threat of atomic warfare. So after World War II, there's always the risk that any sort of conflicts could lead to atomic nuclear war, because at the end of World War II, the U.S. made it very clear that they had nuclear capabilities, and everyone saw the power of the atom bomb dropped on Japan. So the Marshall Plan was to divide up Germany into 4 parts. Here's a map for you. Take a look. You should take notes on the map. You don't have to draw it, but you should show your observations. And notice that Little Berlin is divided the same way, and it's in the Soviet side. We'll watch this video tomorrow. You can add to your notes, so leave a little space to add to them. Then the war, so all that time the war had continued to endure. It is only after the Americans drop our 2 atomic bombs in Japan that the war in the Pacific ends. But till this point, for several months, Japan continues to fight. So now we're going to address how the war ended in the Pacific, or in Asia. So there are decisive battles. There's Iwo Jima. There's a movie, Letters to Iwo Jima, that you can watch for extra credit and write about. There's also the battle at Okinawa. Those are 2 decisive battles. There's a lot of U.S. deaths, and that's one of the reasons the U.S. decided it is now time. We need to try this bomb out and really end the war. So the battles continue. You can see the map with the inset of Iwo Jima. There's some small islands. And then Truman decides it is time to drop the atomic bomb. So Japan only surrenders in August, after the first and only use of atomic weapons in history. And by use, I mean against humans. Otherwise, there's just been tests. So on August 6th, we drop the bomb on Hiroshima. Japan does not surrender, and so we drop our second bomb on Nagasaki on August 9th, which leads to Japanese surrender. We'll watch the video on the development of the atomic bomb tomorrow in class. You can see this mushroom cloud. The immediate blast radius was about 1 mile in circumference, and the radiation and heat, the heat was so strong for about 4.5 miles that anyone within that radius would get either severely burned or killed. So here you can see some examples. The upper left is a mushroom cloud. If we go to right, you can see people who were even miles away from the blast site have severe burns, scars, definitely radiation poisoning. On the bottom left, you see the outer shell of a human. This is what the remains looked like. They were burnt and incinerated so quickly. It was very much like Pompeii, the volcanic explosion, that there was just a shell of what body used to be there. The body itself was incinerated and ash was left behind in the shape of humans. So it really was horrific. And the U.S. had no idea how detrimental or damaging the bomb would be. They'd only ever dropped it in the middle of a desert without testing it on people, obviously. On the bottom right, you can see the city of Hiroshima and what's left after the bomb. So Japan needs to rebuild after 1945. Remember that Japan, before the war, has invaded Korea and China, etc., because we learned about the communists trying to push the Japanese out of China. And so the first thing Japan loses is its territories since 1895. So this is Korea and China. The United States, led by General MacArthur, helps draft the new constitution. So we help Japan set up a new stable government. The Emperor of Japan loses his godlike status, so he no longer has divine right, but he is not tried as a war criminal. Japan is demilitarized. The U.S. puts its army in Japan's territory to serve if they need protection. And there are minimal war crimes tried compared to Germany. Again, there's not a Holocaust that happens in Japan. But there was very harsh treatment of the Chinese and the conquered regions. And in 1951, after 6 years of rebuilding, Japan regains its independence and remains an ally of the United States. So we are now friendly today and strong trading partners. Lasting effects of World War II. One is that the United States has now shown it has nuclear capabilities, which triggers our other superpower, Russia, to develop a nuclear bomb. So they begin their nuclear program in 1943. They have spies in the U.S. and get wind of our Manhattan Project that we are developing a nuclear bomb and try to make one as well to match ours. Because even though we're allies, there's still a lot of tension between the two, and Russia does hope to be a major superpower. The U.S. hoped to regulate nuclear arms after World War II, but we couldn't stop Russia from developing their own, but we did hold an advantage because we had more and we had more earlier. The Soviets don't want to participate in our regulation of nuclear arms. They want to have their own nuclear arms. They feel that they should be equal to the United States, and this starts an arms race. The U.S. perceives if Russia won't agree to cut on their, or limit the amount of nukes they have, we need to develop more. And so each side starts developing more and more nukes to try to match each other's capability. And much of our spending is shifted towards nuclear power and nuclear capabilities. So you can see here nuclear weapon tests from 1945 to 1999 and how many. The U.S. has the most, followed by the Soviets, France, Britain, China. To give you an idea, there is one of our detonations in the desert out west with the mushroom cloud. And so here we go. This is the arms race portrayed. You see the U.S. in white and the Soviets in black. The U.S. started with an early advantage of having so many more warheads, but Russia eventually takes the lead in the 80s and 90s. And they actually destroy themselves in a sense, spending all their money on nuclear weapons, but we'll get to that. But this gives you an idea of the arms race, that the U.S. would need 30,000 nuclear warheads, or that the Soviets would need 45,000. You could blow up the world multiple times with 45,000 warheads. The idea was just about having the most. And so we're going to spend a lot of this week talking about these the implications of nuclear bombs and what this means for the Cold War and our world today, and how conflicts are different because nukes exist. When we talk about nuclear technology, keep in mind that a bomb doesn't necessarily get anywhere. It's just a warhead. So there's a lot of technology and mind power, brain power spent trying to attach these bombs to missiles. And missiles are the ones that actually deliver and carry the bombs on them. And we want to have the longest range missiles, or we want defenses, so we can stop somebody else's missiles. Okay? So we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but remember these notes, number 12, make sure you